All right, so we are in Beacon. Beacon is a GIS web viewer for select cities and counties in select states. Not every state or every county or every city uses Beacon. There are a couple of companies that offer this type of web viewer. Beacon is just one of them. It is used across several states, but not every state. So you can't count on it being available for every single city. Anderson and Madison County use a different web viewer, just as an example. But you can see the counties and cities in Indiana that do use Beacon. Clinton County, Crawford, Dearborn, Gibson, Hancock, Hendricks, Henry, Huntington, Jasper, Knox, Sullivan, Town of Avon, Town of Brownsburg, etc. There are a few municipalities. So we go to Delaware County, Indiana, and then we go straight to View Map. View Map will give you the entire county. We are not interested in the entire county. We are not interested in every layer on the county. If we look at the layer list on this left-hand side, I'll minimize my bookmarks here. There's information here that we might be interested in to create a base map for us to use. There's stuff that we might not be interested in. We may not need all of the data that is included in the generation of this map. We may not need all of the lot numbers, so these are things we can start to turn on and off as we start to view the map. We may not need all the cadastral lines. We might need the parcels, okay? Then there's Muncie data. We've got a parks layer where all the parks are indicated. We've got the entire sanitary district and the entire tree inventory linked, so that's something to view. And as you start to generate maps for your analysis, this is the way to start to navigate through it. Major water features, we've got wetlands, water bodies, lakes and ponds, streams and ditches, good stuff to know. Corporate boundaries, political townships, and aerial photography. We have 2019 aerial photography, which is more accurate than what Google has right now, so we want to probably keep that on. And then there's a FEMA flood zones. I want to turn those on. Probably important, FEMA flood zones. So that said, you can see that the information that the map is populating, if we go to our store site, look for that little speck right there in the middle of a field, just west of North Residence Hall. Should get us there. This is before demolition. This aerial photography is before demolition. Some folks find the aerial photography distracting, so you can always turn it off, and you will see just the parcels. There's also a building footprints function there, just underneath parcels. If you are not interested in the photography to create a base map, you can always turn off the base photography and use building footprints, and those work pretty well. And I'll let that populate now. You can see everything spinning, meaning it's trying to download all of the data from our closest antenna router. You guys are all hardwired, so you're in the internet via hardwire, so yours will populate a little bit faster. Here it comes. Okay, so we've got parcels. So every owner's allotment is visible. We have waterways. We have the 50-year and 100-year floodplains, and we have building footprints. So if I turn off the photography, you see what you get. That's actually a very usable map for making hand drawings and for making SketchUp models and for diagramming over. That right there is quite useful. So you have to decide what kind of map you want to be using in order to start to generate some imagery from that. So it's quite useful because it's not as graphically rich, right? There's not a lot of other stuff going on that's distracting. But sometimes you want both. You want to be able to download both. So at this point, decide what kind of map you want to be using, if you want the aerial photography included or not. And as you can see, I've kept the parks on. I've kept quite a few things on. I don't have lot numbers turned on. major roads, geocoded streets, and the streets are conveniently labeled. So get the site centered a little bit. If you zoom in a little bit or zoom out a little bit, you just want to make sure that it's centered. And we're going to get ready now to use this imagery in something. To make a scaled version of this, it's tempting to click on this little disk called Download Map Image. That's tempting, but it's not enough because it will not give you a north arrow and will not give you a scale to the map. All right? It's tempting just to download that and play with it, but what's best is to do a print setup. That is the third icon from the right in our horizontal icons menu. We then select the paper size. We want an 11 by 17 landscape, high quality, and then we can decide what map scale we're actually going to be working with. 1 to 100 is going to give you the site with a little bit of context. 1 to 200 is going to give you the whole neighborhood. And so what that will do is it'll center it. 1 to 100, it will center the star site in the middle of the 11 by 17. We then have several options here. Turn off header, overview, title, legend, footer, and details. Leave north arrow and scale bar on. Why? Because we want to bring this in Illustrator or Sketchup, we need to be able to scale the map. Okay? Print as PDF. And see if we can break the server. So that will download now. Let's go to CADMapper. Start creating a file. And you do need to use an edu email address. Wait, I've already signed up for this, so. Oh, okay. Most of downtown Muncie's buildings have been built thanks to a guy named Andy Shears. Andy has a PhD in geography. As a cartographer, a professional map maker. He owns a business called Muncie Map Company. And he was bored one day, so he built all of the downtown buildings. So, if you buy a Muncie Killer Goose T-shirt or something like from just mention to him that you really appreciate the fact that he's built all of Muncie's buildings. All of campus's buildings are built, but see, we're not in an area where folks have volunteered their time to build every house. So that's unfortunate. But what it does give us are the roads. So we don't have to draw the roads. Would you like to draw the roads? No. Would you like to use this tool that has the roads drawn? Yes. So, so we can get kind of in here. Maybe that much. You can have up to 1 square kilometer. Up to 1 square kilometer. This is not an American site, so it is in metric. We need to convert it if we bring it into SketchUp. But what we can decide now, what program do we want this to be in? Do we want it to be an Illustrator file? Can it be a SketchUp file? I'm going to do both. You can have you can add a little bit of topography, contours every 4 meters, or if there are 3D buildings built, you can set a false height if there's no 3D data. Road geometry, you need to decide if you're doing just center line, outlines, or mesh. I think I'm going to do mesh because I think that's what worked for us before. If the mesh doesn't work for us, you can try the outline. So there's some variables here in CADMapper that give you different types of models based on the data that you input into it. And then road widths. So a typical suburban street is 37 feet wide. If you divide that by 3, you get what? 6.5 meters. roughly 7 meters, depending on what your average street width is. You can see the default is 8, 8, 8, and 3. So if your highways are wider, that's something you want to enter. There are no highways on our site. Major roads are 8 meters, minor roads 8 meters. So these are things you want to input based on your typical road width. How do you measure road width? You can go back to Beacon and you can use the measuring tool in Beacon to measure road width from there to there. Fastest way to get a decent measurement is just to go back into Beacon, and you can measure road widths, buildings, things of that nature. Okay. I'm going to do both Illustrator and Sketchup just to show you what it will look like once you bring it in. So Illustrator, create file. I think I'll go with outlines. Minimum contour interval is 4 meters. I'm going to try outlines and see what it looks like. Create file. So it's making the file now. It is making an Illustrator SVG. SVG is simplified vector graphic, is the standard language of Illustrator. This is a preview of what the file looks like. You can see based on the road width that I've entered, it's given us an outline of these streets based on that road width of I think it was 8 meters. So 8 meters times 8 times 3 is 24 feet. It might be wider, a little bit wider, but it's an average road width for that. So I download that, go back. I want to download a SketchUp file, a SketchUp 2015 Plus. Again, we can decide if we want outlines or mesh surfaces. It'll give you a model that's a little bit different either way. We'll pick this, we'll make this model roughly this size. We can enter topography, all those same things we did before. Yeah. The SketchUp file looks like this. These are mesh surfaces. The option for outlines or mesh surfaces will give you a different look depending on what's in the model. So go ahead and download that. Then I'll open that in SketchUp. And it will look like this. Okay. The CADMapper site has given us all of this information as separate layers. The contours, the minor roads, the paths are all on separate things. Anything we don't need as we move forward, then you can turn off. The topography is a thing because we asked for it. You can see there's a slight grade change there. So it might be difficult to place buildings on this. What I like to do is place my buildings on a separate file, on a flat file based off of an image, group them, and then bring them to a site like this that might have a slight topographic change. If you are to build buildings on this, it could become extremely frustrating. The other thing you want to do, we need to change the working units of the model because this is in metric. So we have to go to Model Info. So we go Window, Model Info, and we go down to Units. Right now the units are in meters, and so we want to change them to architectural units. You could also change to engineering units depending on what you're working with in your planning agency or firm, but this will now change us to feet and inches, so architectural units. And if we perform a quick test, we can see that that is 557 feet. We are now working in American Standard System or Imperial System. So that is now the site in SketchUp. I don't typically build buildings or things on top of this. I set this model aside is what I do because it's not flat. I typically build buildings off of a flat image. Could be a hand drawing, could be our GIS, okay? So this is nice, right? But if we start building buildings on this, it could become frustrating very quickly because buildings like to sit on flat things. In SketchUp, it gets extremely finicky in terms of how things contact that. So what I typically do is set this aside. I'll build my buildings and development, and I'll bring it in and lay this on top, is what I typically do. So I'll save this as something else. CADMapper. And then I need to open, I'm going to open the SVG and look at that in Illustrator. There. Okay, you can see already. I mean, that would be several hours of work if we were to draw that from scratch. All right, layers. This is on these are all on one layer, but each of these lines is its own thing. You can see I can click on all of the roads. I can click on all of the topography, delete it if I want. Everything came in on its own layer. So that's potentially good. In Illustrator, I like to go to View and Show Grid. It just gives me an operating grid so where I can see things that might be white. If you have an element that is white in Illustrator, you can't see it, but if you have the grid turned on, you might be able to see it. So we can start to build a diagram off of this and start to get into some fun diagramming language, maybe. So what is some analytical stuff that we might need coming into this? Do that. The line segment tool, we can just grab a line segment here, tell it to become a stroke of 12 or more, 14, uniform, basic, and then in the stroke menu, we can determine the stroke weight. We can apply an arrowhead to it. And it's on the wrong end, so I can, in this stroke menu, I can flip it like so. And I can change the size of it, this arrowhead, 50%, 50%, and it gives me an arrow weight that might be helpful for use in diagramming. Where do the winter winds come from? Bueller. Where do winter winds come from? Do winter winds come from the south? So I can select these three, go to colors, swatches, brushes, swatches. I just go to window and then colors or color. There's color libraries. There's a ton of color libraries involved here. There may be some pre-loaded swatches already in your library. There may be swatches that you can download from Adobe Color Wheel. There's some variety of things. So another thing I like to do a lot is use the pen tool, and with the pen tool I can start to demarc different zones of stuff on the site. There's a solid right now, but I can change the opacity of that, and it reads as a transparency. I'm going to make another layer. Let's do a site approach, maybe. Can I do this? Brush tool, Blob Brush tool. Oh yeah, that's better. Okay. So I'm going to make another layer and show an approach. The Blob Brush tool allows us to make freeform lines, which are a little more freedom to them. I can add stroke to that. So look for the Blob Brush tool. Paintbrush tool and the Blob Brush tool are together. Why isn't it doing this? And what that does is it allows you to start to make more freeform lines like this that might become part of a diagram or a concept. Okay, you can always add arrows to them. What I like to do is take a paintbrush tool like that, and then I take another line segment and I extend it like that. What I like to do is make an extension from that, add some weight to it, and then I can add an arrowhead to that. So see what that does? It's a little wonky, but there's the ability to start to make some compound arrows that involve the paintbrush tool and the stroke tool. And when you line them up just right, they kind of look like they belong together. See how that works? So they're straight arrows, obviously, for the line. That. Maybe it's more like that. I'll add an arrowhead to it. Go the other way. Make the arrowhead smaller. And then just line the two of them up. Sometimes I just line them up like that. Land use for residential is yellow. So I'm going to make a yellow cell for that. Obviously, land use for green is going to be for open space. We had talked about an open space strategy that might include portions of the ditch. I can use the pen tool for that. So try the pen tool out and try to make a compound shape like this. I'll come see how you're doing. Change the opacity down. That's on its own layer, so I can always move that layer below other things. Or I can take the object, arrange, send it to back. I can put it underneath the other things. Okay. Asterisks, we can either make them or we can download them. Yeah, that's everything from last year. So, but what I can do is add these two boxes so they're easier. So if I download one of the asterisks there, I can lay it directly into the map like so. Boom. So that creates a point of emphasis in the map. We can bring in our map. Well, we can bring in, I can select all of this and copy it to the clipboard. And then I can open a template that I have made for you. It's called 11 by 17 template. It's in Canvas. And what that has is it's got a title here that you can customize. It's got a north arrow. It's got a graphic scale that we can customize. So if we take all of this work here and we grab it, take it to the clipboard, we can bring it into here. I'll paste it in front. And we scale it up. It's all one group, like so. Keep it as a group. Okay. Then we can place our other map download from Beacon in Illustrator underneath other things. Bring it in on its own layer. Or on a previous layer. And if you can get it scaled just right, you can see that your information can layer over it, perhaps. I can change the opacity of that background image, and I can have it read against the other information that I have. There may just be some tweaking in terms of layering this stuff together. There may be tweaking in terms of how this information lays on top of it, but there is the ability to start to build up layers of information on top of it. So store 1 to 100, 11 by 17. When you open any PDF in Photoshop, it's going to ask you some questions. How big are you cropping to a bounding box or to the media box? I typically say to the bounding box. It'll ask you how wide you want it to be and how high you want it to be in terms of pixels or inches or others. It'll ask you what resolution you want it to be. Do you want it to be at 300 pixels per inch or 200? Do you want it to be grayscale, RGB color, or CMYK color? And all those questions when it will convert the PDF into a pixeled image. So right now it's 4800 by 2969. That's pretty big. I wouldn't mind making it just a little bit smaller, 200 pixels per inch, and it has converted now the PDF into a pixel image. What we can do then, this is a lot of detail and a lot of extra information, which we may not be interested in. We may be interested in that, but sometimes what I like to do is just turn the opacity down of this image. The entire image's opacity can be turned down. I can click on the layer and just turn the opacity down to 60, 70%. We still need this scale bar to be visible. So I'll just turn the opacity to like 70, 80%, something like that. It is still at true size. It's still 11 by 17. It's still 200 dots per inch. And I'll save this as to my computer as a JPEG. SketchUp will only accept a JPEG as a base image. So I'm going to say store base image as a JPEG with the opacity slightly down. So and then I'm done with Photoshop. So all I did was convert a PDF into a pixel image, turn the opacity down, save it as a JPEG. And now we'll open up SketchUp. I'll just take a new document. I'm running Pro version 2020. You are all running Pro version 2019. Go ahead and delete the person that's there. Get rid of them. We don't need them right now. We're going to import that new image that we just made. Okay, that new image that we just made. It's a JPEG file. Did I find it? Tell me I lost it already. Actually, I can drag it right in. Store, there it is, store base image. And so I can import store base image, and it brings it into the, I click it onto the origin. Okay, so there's the image now sitting there in SketchUp. See if you can get to that level. Go into where it says 100 feet in our lower left. This is why it was so critical that we have this scale bar on our beacon image. Grab the measuring tape. Put the measuring tape on one end. Put the measuring tape to the other end as best you can. Click once and then type 100, single quote. What does single quote mean? Feet. What does double quotes mean? Inches. Click return. Do you want to resize the model? Yes. Zoom extents. Do that for me. All right, another feature. Next feature. Creature feature. Grab the pencil, draw a line along this property line boundary. Okay, just draw a line there. It's not perfectly north, true north, because Muncie isn't perfectly true north. That's the way it is. Everything in Muncie is 1 degree off. The measuring tape has a toggle. What's a toggle? A toggle is a series of operations or commands that are hidden underneath it. So, what does that mean? So if I grab the measuring tape and then I grab this line that we've just made, in the Mac, the Option key, it says Option equal toggle create guides. What does your computer say? Allows the measuring tool in SketchUp to do a couple of different things. For planners, this create guideline tool might be our most valuable tool, because it means that this guideline now can be aligned to any of the property lines, any landmark, any existing street. And that's nice because we had anticipated, right, using some existing streets to bring us in. See this existing street up here along Mansfield? Which one is this? Forest, Euclid, one of those. So we may want to reference that street width as we start to build up an idea for the site, I can drop guidelines into this to start to build an ordering system for the site. So I'll draw another line over here, which represents our line along the ditch. And then I'll grab my measuring device. It's already toggled for guides. So see what I can do here? I can say, you know what? I only want to build to there. Or I only want to reference a road width here. Or I want to start to build a grid for the site here. Things like that, okay? What that starts to do then, it allows you to start to lay out the beginnings of a concept for the site itself. So what I'll do then is continue to reference existing streets. I want to reference Euclid. Here's Euclid down here. And those guides then start to divide. So what I can do is start to lay in this. That will start to fill in. Already there's a portion of the site that's already kind of in transition. So I want to make sure, because the site starts to drop off pretty quickly there, we don't want to build on those portions there. Layer management in SketchUp is important. So all this work that I've done up to this point, I probably want it to be on a certain layer, or in Pro version 2020, they're called tags. So I'll open up the layers window, or in my case, the tags window in version 2020. Everything right now is untagged, so I want to create a new layer, and I'll just call it land layer. And if I select things in SketchUp from the left in a window, it'll select them. I can alt-click or control-click, and I can push things to a certain layer. Anytime you have anything in SketchUp and it's on the wrong layer, or if you want to keep it on a separate layer, you can select it and control-click or right mouse click or alt-click it. You can push it to a certain layer. Now, I want to go to the resources folder again, or the 3D warehouse. Probably just the resources folder at this point. In this resources folder, I'm looking for your participation. I've got one called SketchUp Models and Components. If we go to 3D Warehouse now, we see every product under the sun is available to us. But if we go Craftsman Home, and either as models or as collections, we see some things that are a little bit smarter. Often they'll be under collections, and this is where home builders or home designers are sharing their models with the world. Some of these are pretty good, okay? They're very typical of what's in the market now. They're pretty typical of what could be very much in character with what's happening there. So just know that there's a lot of junk on the 3D warehouse, but there is some stuff that we can use that would be appropriate for our site and is very much in tune with the market. When you pull up an entity in the 3D warehouse, it tells you some things. It tells you how many materials are loaded on it, how many polygons, the file size, and its date. That'll tell you which version of SketchUp it's going to be compatible with. So any one of these here could work. It'll ask me what model of SketchUp I want to use it in. So for you, definitely pick 2019. So I've downloaded this house. I'll open it in a separate SketchUp window. And I'll look at it. And I'll open up its layers or its tags. And so we've got a roof layer, and we've got a second floor layer. I recommend painting it white and just getting rid of that, getting rid of all of that. So to do that, I zoom out a little bit. I select the whole model. I then go to Edit. I select all of it, yeah. I open up the Paint Bucket tool. I get my colors. I pick white as snow, and I do my best to paint the whole thing white. And just get rid of that. I don't want that to be part of the planning conversation. I want the house as a mass. That's it. Okay? I'm going to save this now as a SketchUp model version 2019 so you can use it. Think. If I save a SketchUp model as 2020 and share it to you, you won't be able to open it. If I save it as a 2019 and share it to you, you can open it. Okay? So what should we call this? Two-story front garage craftsman house. I'll see that to my messy desktop and upload it to the box folder. Come on, there we go. All right, there's the house on the site. Yes. Oh, I do want to turn on the shadows. View, window, or under window, shadows. We should be good. We can also geolocate the model. We can type in a location or tell it to be in Muncie, or give us an accurate shadow study. A few houses here. I'll turn those shadows off, I think. So in SketchUp, you can lay out your streets, place buildings, start to get a sense for what direction you want to take the site. Once you get a model, once you get one of these in here, you can copy and paste it, or you can make it a component. It already is a component, which is good. You can actually edit the component, which is good. Let's say I have several instances of this component in the model. And I just copied it, and now I'm pasting it. Move these around. This is kind of fun. So this is a component. I can edit the component. And if I edit the component, it will change every instance of that house. So let's say I added another dormer onto it, it would automatically do that for all of those. So that's another feature worth knowing in SketchUp. But let's say we are, let me just quickly just lay out a site. Make that a group. So you could conceivably start to create some clusters for yourself. Might be a mixed-use housing cluster or a mixed model housing cluster. It might be a mixture of 2 or 3 cottages plus a couple of 2 or 3 two-story homes. Whatever you think is going for the site, you can start grabbing these 3D warehouse components and make your own housing library, which can be really fun for laying out subdivisions fast in this fashion. So you might lay out the streets first, you might lay out the houses first, kind of your choice. But I do want to take you sort of to the next level now and show you how to export this into Photoshop and the like. I want to create something that has scale reference. So I'm going to make a rectangle down here and then move that, marry that to the site. So that's a 100-foot bar. That is now a scale reference for me. Oops. No. I want this scale reference bar. I just want something in the model close to the houses that I can know is 100 feet, no matter what. See that? I've made a scale reference bar off of the map, and I'm going to move that close to the houses so that as I export these houses, take them into Illustrator or Photoshop, I have something in the model that tells me what is 100 feet. That's important, right? That's a necessary thing. So let me go to the top view, camera, standard view, top, and zoom out. And make sure that perspective is turned off. There's parallel projection and perspective. You want to make sure parallel projection is turned off. We may want shadows. That's possible. We may not want shadows. So if I go to Window, Shadows, turn them on, we can pick a time of day. Come on, there. Oh. We can pick a time of day and a time of year that the shadows are visible and therefore casting onto the ground. So we could pick August, we could pick September, time of day, afternoon, morning. We always know that the sun is in the south, not in the north. And there's some settings here, the darkness and lightness of the solar shade is visible there. All right, it's going to seem a little kooky, a little crazy, a little nuts, but so has everything else today. Take the site portions here and we're going to make them, need to drag mouse to select multiple. Okay. I'm going to paint that a weird color, really weird color. I'm going to paint that a recognizable color. Something really strange and hot, because in Photoshop it makes it easier to select it. I'm going to do a different color for that. I think we're in Buenos Aires or Mexico City now, okay? Something of that nature. Then I'm going to, my base map here, I'm going to push that. We've got some tags here now. I'm gonna make a base layer, or under tags in 2020 version. In 2019 version, these are called layers. I'm just gonna move the base map to its own layer and move it below everything else. And I do that by right mouse click or control click, entity info over the base map. And I'm going to tell it to move that base map to a different layer, okay? And once it's on its own layer, then it won't bother us anymore. We can then have the ability then to turn it off. Turn it off. You could also delete it at this point because you may not need it, you may need it later. I'll get rid of these guidelines. I can select those and hit the delete key, and those are gone. I'll get rid of these, and I will go to View, and I'll turn off the axes. Axes are turned off, the shadows are still on. And I'm going to get ready to export this. Export 2D graphic as a JPEG image. Actually, as a portable network graphic image. We're going to export this as a portable network graphic image. I want to be careful, though. I want to make sure I just have everything in the view that I want. This is maybe the beginning of my first idea for the cluster. 2D graphic, PNG, options. I can use the view size, transparent background. I can use the view size, which is already pretty big. My view size is a Retina screen for the Mac, but I can also make this a little bit bigger. Let's say 3,000 pixels wide. Click OK. But I got to make sure I have this as a PNG, and I have these options turned on, and I have transparent background ready. And then export. Okay, so that's exported. Yay. Open up Photoshop, create new. Let's make a (11 by 17) horizontal inch image. 200 pixels per inch. Create. Let's place embedded this new image that we just made. Yep. Okay. Your house is underground? Okay. Okay. Export 2D graphic. Store test. Desktop. Options. 3,000. Okay. Export. File, place embedded, store, place, should look like that. Okay. All right. I have to rasterize it, so I double click on the layer, or control click or alt click on the layer, rasterize the layer. All right, under resources are some textures: wood, brick, concrete, grass, stone, metal, paper, fabric. I'm going to go to grass, and this is a big, big file of green grass. Massive file of green grass. So I'll download that. I'll open that. Select all, copy. It's now copied to the clipboard. Now I'm going to select, on our plan here, I'm going to select a color range. Have to have the active layer on there, okay? Select color range and select all the pink. All the pink, okay? Select, deselect. I want to go select color range, and I want to select all the pink. Fuzziness controls how much of the pink we select. I want to select as much of the pink as possible. So that now all has that is all now part of a selection. All right? So I've downloaded a grass texture. I've copied it to the clipboard. I've made a selection. Now we're about to make the magic happen. We're going to make a mask out of this. I'm going to make a new layer. Edit, paste special, paste into. Oh, big, right? Fairly big. Okay. Not quite. But that's a little funky, but a little fresh, a little funky. Maybe we do this a couple of times. But this is the effect of making a mask. We can take a texture, a high resolution texture like this, and we can extend it really big, and then we can paste it into an area like this. Okay. I might do this a couple of times just because the nature of the texture is such that I don't want to see specific blades of grass, but I can also transform that. And start to mask in. Oops. Okay. Select the pink again, and then paste it into. try that again. Oops. Paste into. We're reaching entropy now. So I've got a thing, something. I've got another layer. This would work better if I had glasses on. And I'm going to call that tweeze. Tweeze. We plant some tweeze. We plant the trees. We have two colors in Photoshop. We have a foreground layer and a background layer. Foreground layer and a background layer. Pick a green for your foreground layer. Pick a different green for your background layer. Huh. Okay, two greens. Okay, I'm on a new layer. Do not paint this on a different layer, please. Do not paint this on a different layer. Okay, let's take a brush. We adjust our brush size in the upper left like this. Just a hard, round brush to what we think is a tree size, a good size tree for this. Okay, maybe it's like there. And I have to make sure that it's a hard round, not a soft round. It's got to be 100% opacity. It's got to be 100% flow. Boom. Nice green circle like that, okay? We are on a separate layer. We are not painting on a different layer. We have to make sure this is the right layer, okay? Tree, 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 tree. Okay. So these are green circles on their own layer right now. Right mouse click, duplicate that layer. Duplicate the layer. Trees, copy, we're going to call it trees shadows. Duplicate that layer. We have trees on a layer. We have tree shadows on a layer. Take the shadows, drop in the layers menu, drop it below the trees, and bring them off to the side a little bit, the same direction that your house shadows are, okay? And then, just using the adjustments, I'm going to darken those tree shadows. With brightness and contrast, I'm going to make them black. I can change the opacity of that layer to about 80%, and look what's happening. We have a shadow effect on these trees. We have a shadow effect. I can also go into filters, and I can go to blur. I can go to motion blur, and I can give those trees a little bit of blur, those tree shadows a little bit of blur, like so. Okay. I'll go back to the trees layer, and if I have two different greens, one as a foreground and one as a background layer, I can apply a filter to those. I like the sponge filter. So if we go under Filter Gallery, there's different sketch and stylized and textured things. I like the, under artistic, there's one called sponge. And what it does is it makes this green pattern. If I turn down the brush, it makes it just kind of look like a leaf pattern, right? Definition, smoothness. Okay. Oh, I made a boo-boo. I made a big boo-boo. Okay, there. I got my layers mixed up. That'd be the worst thing that happened today. Put that through that filter. There. Okay. Now, too close, that's very close to the grass. I need to adjust the brightness and contrast of these trees so that they pop. We can adjust the brightness and contrast of those so that they pop. All right, so theoretically, you have houses, trees, lawn, maybe paving. At this point, you could lay out the streets as Photoshop color, right? You could lay out the street in SketchUp. I'm going to save this now as a copy. In Photoshop, if you save any document that has a lot of layers to it, you can come back to it. So if you save it as a PSD file, it'll preserve all of the layers. So you can come back to it later. I'm getting ready to place this, though, in something else, so I'm going to save it as a copy. So I want to turn on as a copy, turn off the layers, save this as a PNG, plan, store, plan, option 1. And now that's ready to place into Illustrator. So I've saved it as a PNG with the layers turned off, so it's, well, wait. I want to be careful here. I'm going too fast. I want to make sure this is saved as a Photoshop document because that'll preserve all of these layers as is. Okay, save, computer, store, plan, option 1. What this will do then is preserve all of my layers as intact things, so I can always come back to it later. Then I go back to Illustrator, and whatever map I was using, whatever map template I was using, I can place this map into it. So let's say I have a background image or a base map. So I can place that PDF like so. Drag that, bring it in. I don't want to distort it. I want to keep, I've got to be careful because I don't want to smoosh it. Okay, that's the technical term. I don't want to change the proportions too dramatically. Okay. sometimes what I do now is I make a big square, and it's white. And then I change the opacity of that square, or rectangle, to make it almost like it's like looking at the site through milk. Okay? I call this ghosting. You can ghost your X, you can ghost this map. So I'm just putting this thing over it. So there's different things we can do to that base map, but we can take it into Photoshop and change its opacity, or we can just put a big screen in front of it. And then, big finish, our brand new base plan. Oops, not that one. Store plan option 1 PNG. I'm going to place that now there. I've got my scale reference, so I just bring it down. As my mother would say, bring it down. Go down to the laundromat and get me a box of Tide, Lauren. There, see how that's now matched? So now I can put it into place, laid on top of the GIS image or the aerial image, whatever that image is. So you're determining now how much of this GIS map you're using. Are you using flats? Are you using floodways? Are you using roads? Determine where your base image is, or is it just the aerial? Okay. You create the aerial in Beacon. You make a PDF out of it. You can bring that into Illustrator. You make your plan in a combination of Sketchup and Photoshop. You save that as a PNG. You can float it over this, and you start to build up some layers. There might be diagramming layers now that's involved with this. There might be additional information layers or pieces like an arrow